Well, when it comes to lifting those mask mandates, we wanted to know, was the decision based on science or politics? Our fact check team going beyond the headlines to see what's really behind the changes.
As the list of states ending mask mandates keeps growing, we see many leaders acknowledging a new phase of the pandemic, even though the CDC hasn't changed its guidance just yet. Our investigative producers have been combing through state data, policies, and scientific studies on this all night long. Janae, we first start with you. What did you find out tonight?
So a key difference that we are seeing is that some of the mask mandate lifts do not include schools. For instance, California's indoor mask mandate will expire next Tuesday for folks that are vaccinated, but masks are still required in schools. They link to the CDC guidance, which recommends universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors. Now, New York and Illinois are also lifting the statewide mask mandate, but keeping it for schools. The governors of both states promised to continue assessing. Meanwhile, places like New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, and Oregon will lift their mask mandates for schools in the coming weeks.
And as these mask policies start to shift, one of the key questions is what the decision is based on, and that's front and center. In New York, the policy change says, quote, "This is a new phase of the pandemic, but stressed mask use still." The policy is pushing the decision down to local businesses, removing statewide requirements on February 10th. The health commissioner, Dr. Mary Bissett, said, quote, "We have reached a critical point in our fight." Even Dr. Anthony Fauci said, quote, "We are certainly heading out of this pandemic phase," and that local decisions would become more the norm. While these 8 states are changing their policies, 7 states, including Alaska and Texas, effectively never enacted statewide mandates. This new shift is in stark contrast to the over 2 years of debate about public health policy and the level that these decisions can be made at, even going all the way up to the Supreme Court.
A state-by-state breakdown. John and Janae, thank you so much. When the Fact Check team returns later in our show, our investigative producers look into whether or not these decisions are being made based on science or politics and what the metrics look like between these very different state policies.
In Georgia, the governor has announced he'll introduce legislation to ban school mask mandates. In an interview with a local news outlet, Governor Brian Kemp said he thinks districts are still mandating masks because of politics, not science. Only a handful of districts in the state still have mask mandates in place. The governor says he'll have more details on those bills in the next few days. Within the next few weeks, nearly half the country will have dropped the mask mandates. But now some are asking, why now? The Fact Check team showing us the reasoning behind those changes tonight.
With cases falling and some governors calling for a, quote, new phase of the pandemic, the Fact Check team is looking at different policies state by state to compare and contrast. Our Fact Check team here joining me now, John and Janae. So, John, walk us through some of this tonight. How effective were some of these policies?
So, first off, the CDC's policy remains that masks should be worn in any indoor space. This applies to areas of high transmission, vaccinated or not. And according to their transmission breakdown, 99% of the country is at that level. But we wanted to compare cases from states with mask mandates to those that never had them. Not to question the effectiveness of masks, but the mandatory policy. Out of those 7 states with no mandate, only Alaska was in the top 10 states for cases per 100,000 people. 5 of the states were actually in the bottom half across the U.S., and none were in the top 10 for deaths by 100,000. Those 8 states just now changing policies, 4 of them were in the top half of cases per capita, and the rest spanned the list. Oregon stood out as being one of the lowest case rate states, but Rhode Island was on the other end, number 1 in the U.S. for cases per 100,000 people. The big reason for these differences is major cities and just how tightly packed people live together. But the bottom line is that while public health measures like masks have been shown to make a difference, making them mandatory didn't seem to have much of a change.
Interesting. And Janae, how are some of the medical experts out there responding to some of these ongoing policy changes?
So the CDC admits it's tough to change mask guidance. You'll remember last May, the CDC declared that vaccinated folks did not need to wear a mask. That recommendation, of course, changed. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky says, "We really do have to look at our hospitalization hospitalization rates and our death rates to look to when it's time to lift some of these mitigation efforts. We will continue to reevaluate, and we know people are anxious. Walensky also said that policies lifting mask mandates have to be made at a local level, depending on case rates. Now, the actions of the Biden administration are drawing criticism. Dr. Leanna Wen, a former Baltimore health commissioner, said these governors wanted CDC input and asked for it, but without a clear timeline, at some point, they had to decide that they couldn't wait anymore. She went on to say that the CDC is making itself less and less relevant every day. While it's clear that masks were essential at some point, as the data changes, recommendations will change as well.
Janae and John tonight tracking these ongoing policy changes. The Fact Check team will continue to follow developments on this and several other issues. You can also read this story with links to where they found all of their information on our website, thenationaldesk.com.